It's the Security Weekly News, and it's episode 410. It's the week of 25 August 2024, and we've got MG's Free Speech, Sedexp, Cthulhu, SeaTac, GrimResource, ServiceBridge, the FBI, Josh Marpet returns from the great beyond, and more on this edition of the Security Weekly News.
This is a Security Weekly production for security professionals by security professionals. Please visit securityweekly.com/subscribe to subscribe to all the shows on our network.
We interrupt our program to bring you this important message.
It's the show that keeps you up to date on the latest security news twice a week. Your trusted source for accurate security information and expert analysis. It's time for the Security Weekly News. ThreatLocker implements a least privileged approach to cybersecurity, blocking every executable unless specifically authorized by your team. This methodology mitigates ransomware, supply chain attacks, zero-day exploits, and ensures 24/7, 365.25 protection for your organization. To learn more about how ThreatLocker can help prevent known and unknown threats in your digital environment, safeguard your data and operations from threat actors, and align your organization with respected compliance frameworks, visit securityweekly.com/ThreatLocker.
Hi folks, I'm Adrian Sanabria, the host of Enterprise Security Weekly. Every week, we interview the most interesting folks we can find, talking about the most pressing cybersecurity issues and challenges facing the enterprise today. Myself and my co-hosts have each been in the industry for decades, long enough to see the patterns in the industry and explore where trends are going. In addition to enterprise challenges, we also follow the vendor space, the most interesting security startups emerging, technology and product trends, all of the most interesting funding and acquisition announcements. Finally, we love to discuss the latest trends in tech and how they'll impact cybersecurity. If you're wondering how the latest in AI, quantum computing, cloud, and DevOps is going to impact security a few years down the road, you should follow the Enterprise Security Weekly podcast.
All right, in exile on the island of Elba, it is the Security Weekly News. I'm Doug White, and welcome to the show. Don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and leave a comment on your favorite platform because, you know, the last time somebody didn't hit the button every 108 minutes, well actually, nothing really happened, but I think a whole bunch of quantum universes went up like celluloid collars or something like that, and wow, did I mix a lot of references there. But, you know, hey, that's me. Sedexp. Anytime I see SAD, I get excited. But Sedexp is a malware that runs in Linux, and it has apparently been running undetected since 2022. And it is apparently a brand new persistence technique. I mean, I wasn't totally 100% that it was a completely brand new persistence technique, but it's an innovative persistence technique. And their definition of new was that there was not a specific attack in the MITRE attack framework. How do you pronounce the ampersand? I mean, like, you know, why name your product something nobody can say? It's like when Prince changed his name and then everybody had to say, you know, the artist formerly known as Prince or the site formerly known as Twitter. And, you know, it just makes things complicated, guys. Like, I mean, there must be some way to, anyway, I don't know. Anyway, this malware, it was all stuff near and dear to my heart. So it works using UDEV rules. And if you aren't, you know, current on your Linux skills, UDEV rules are part of the device management system in your Linux kernel. And UDEV basically is a way to process the /dev or /etc/dev directory where you can find all your devices, right? So this was an old forensics tactic, was to scan the dev directory, because then you could see things that had been attached, you could see things that had been unattached, and so forth. But the dev directory, you will see node files get created and deleted as devices come and go. So if you plug in a USB flash drive or something, then a node file gets instantiated in the /dev directory. If you pull it back out, that file gets deleted, although you can undelete some of that stuff. But UDEV is also how all the drivers for all those devices get loaded and unloaded as well. So UDEV rules then are just these text files like everything else in Linux. And those text files determine how certain devices or events should be handled. So, you know, typically these rules get created by an installer. or some other handler, but you can write them yourself if you want to. And you can find all these rules on your Linux system under /etc/udev/rules.d or lib/udev/rulesd, depending on what kind of rules they are. And Sedexp malware basically is very clever. And in another way, it's very simple. They add a udev rule, which on the compromised system, and when that udev rule gets triggered, basically it's going to run the malware, right? So this udev rule is pretty clever. So anytime a device gets added to the system, these rules get processed, and their rule basically used random numbers to determine if it should run or not. And it looks like I wrote it, but I didn't write it. I promise. I mean, it used a random number. So, my students will all be going, oh, that sounds like Doug. But if you plug in a flash drive, it immediately checks /dev/random. And if it matches the numbers in their rule, it executes the malware. So it's not only sort of sneaky, but it's not, consistent. So it doesn't just happen every time somebody plugs something in, and so everything just looks normal and typical to the system. Now, the malware has a process called kdev-temp-fs, which again sounds like something I would write, because I would never name a malware process something like Big Daddy 69 or Screw udev or some of the stupid stuff I've seen. But again, I didn't write it. But Sedexp then manipulates memory to hide any files, which has the string Sedexp from, if you type ls or find, you won't see it. Again, well, that sounds like something I would do, but I didn't do it. The malware can do, it can do whatever it wants to do, but one of the versions injects a reverse shell, and they've also seen it using credit card scrapers on a web server. So, there's it's an interesting article. So you can check to see if you're infected with it by examining your udev rules to see if you have a run + equals a sedexp line. I didn't write it, I assure you. Now, here's another one. So I love this one. So they were throwing up things on the news recently that just really get my attention. And this one was called Cthulhu. And it was like, okay, wow, is this like the news is being written for me? I love it. And it has a second feature, which I really like, because it basically involves scamming scammers, which, I really, it's also something I would do, but I did not do. So this one's called Cthulhu Stealer, and it targets macOS, and it's posing as legitimate software. So this is, again, it's like something I would do. It was like StarTrek.com. But basically, they pose this thing up as some kind of legit software. And then if you accidentally click on it, it tries to grab actually it said more than 24 types of data off of the system. Now, the interesting thing about it was they said it appears to be based on Atomic Stealer, which is a similar product. But Atomic Stealer, which is a malware as a service product, is available for about $1,000 per month. And this one is, now how much would you pay? $500 a month, down at Crazy Eddie's Malware. And of course, just like when you see somebody selling, a Tesla X for half price, and you kind of wonder maybe something's wrong with that. And is Tesla actually spelled with a Z? Tesla? Wait, maybe this is not what I thought it was. But anyway, Cato Security revealed information about this last week. And the group behind Cthulhu is not the same one that is selling Atomic, according to Cato. Cato, went through it. They said it appears to be based on the same thing, but it was a different group. But all the spelling mistakes in the code have carried over from Atomic, which is a way that we catch you cheating on your programming assignments. I'm like, really? Obviously you copied this. But anyway, a post on a cybercrime site in March of this year accused Cthulhu of failing to pay affiliates their cut of the money they were stealing from victims. And one affiliate claimed that the operator owed them $4,500. Like, hey, you guys suck, man. You owe me money. Like, hey, where's my money? Where's my money? Where's my money, Brian? But Cthulhu Stealer is usually initiated by posing as some legitimate software. And some of the ones that they have posed as are Clean My Mac, Adobe GenP, and even Grand Theft Auto 6. StarTrek.com? Anyone? It wasn't me, though. The malware is an Apple disk image or a DMG file. This is one of my favorite file types too, the DMG file, damage. But it's written in Golang, And it basically starts scanning your system. It extracts your keychain. It retrieves IP details. It fingerprints a system and obviously uploads all that stuff. It looks for credentials, crypto wallets, gaming accounts like Minecraft or Battle.net. Really, it's like top of the line, stealer. So Cato Security said to enable your built-in security features, like Gatekeeper. And they also said to ensure you have up-to-date patches from Apple to prevent this thing from, I guess, doing something. But I was just like, criminals cheating criminals. I mean, that's never happened before. I mean, I remember this story when I was working with the police, and they once were telling me this story about this guy who comes in. He wants to fill out a police report. He's accusing his neighbor of stealing a whole bunch of stuff from his shed. And he's got this big, long list of things that's been stolen, including like outboard motors and all this stuff. And all the stuff that was on the list, he had stolen from a retail store. Like the minute they took the list, they were like, wow, this is on our list already. That was all stolen from this other place. And the guy's like, oh yeah, that wasn't me, man. No way. I know. I found that stuff. It was in an alley and it said, take me. No way. I stole that stuff. And even though you got this picture of me from a security camera, I was down there for something. Anyway. All right. SeaTac, this Seattle-Tacoma International Airport, confirmed a cyber attack is causing an ongoing problem that disrupted reservation check-in systems and delayed flights this past weekend, which makes it no different than any other day. Now, if you ever flew to on SIA to Singapore via SeaTac, this is that airport. Yeah, I love SIA. But somebody needs to send me to Singapore for something. Come on, folks. I mean, surely somebody needs me in Singapore for something. Anyway, on Saturday, the Port of Seattle warned that both the port and SeaTac were suffering from a possible cyber attack. Yesterday, they confirmed that, yep, it was an attack. They've not yet said exactly what the attack was. The airport on Sunday was putting out all kinds of information telling flyers to get their gate information and flight information from the airline's websites, Grandpa. I was like, is there anybody that still looks at those boards? I'm like, you don't have the app for your airline? Really? Like, really? You don't? Anyway, if you're traveling there, they advised you to check in online and get boarding passes before you arrived. Stick to carry-on luggage, allow extra time, and confirm date details with the airline. That's pretty good advice on any given day anywhere. I'm like, wow, really? Like, you still rely on paper boarding passes printed on a laser printer? I'm like, okay, I always see those people, I got my printed boarding pass. But anyway, if you're using an airline app, they said you should be okay. They said the outage was not impacting flights, but there may have been extended delays. And that in Alaska Airlines, who is a big user of that airport, said that the baggage system was extremely limited as SeaTac. So if you're checking bags, well, good luck with that. Your bags are all going to Guam and you're going somewhere else entirely. You're going to Singapore. But anyway, nobody's yet taken responsibility for the attack, and there didn't seem to be many details about the attack. So I'm sure we'll hear more at some later date. GrimResource, good name. This is a new technique that would allow attackers to execute code, and I really like this, in the Microsoft Management Console, or the MMC. I mean, every Microsoft server has this on it, right? It's got this MMC thing. It's how you manage all your resources and you pull all this up. And initially I was like, ooh, is there like a 0-day or something in it? But wait. So attacks using GrimResource start with a zip file phishing attack. Okay, so then I'm like, okay, well, I'm not going to be subject to that. But it also said it could be a malicious website with a download, StarTrek.com. Now, the zip file contains a file with a Windows cert or PDF icon, but it's actually a saved management console file. And I immediately was like, oh, I see where this is going. Because those MSC files, if you've ever used that system, you can write your own or save them config files for the MMC that are called MSC files. And then you can load up different ones on the fly in server management. So if you've got a lot of different things you're doing, you may want to have those multiple configs. Now, I mean, you're probably familiar with all the exploits of MSI, ISO, LNK, and so forth. But they said these guys are all expanding their offerings because everybody's blocking all these kind of files. So when people try to download MSIs and so forth, they get blocked. Elastic said they found GrimResource in July, and then it takes advantage of a 6-year-old cross-site scripting issue in the Windows Auth Protocol domain support library, which allows arbitrary code execution. Okay, that would be bad. So by using this, the victim doesn't actually have to click any links or anything else. They just open this MSC file. Now, they had to get it from somewhere, so there is that one step in there. But, if they're clicking on, I don't know, download nude photos of Aaron Leyland, and, they end up with this thing, and poof. Now, it can download a signed Microsoft executable dfsfz.exe file, which is a legit file, but they've renamed it oncesvc.exe, which wouldn't really do much. But the minute you see these renamed legit files, you must already be thinking DLL sideloading, right? Because that's where that comes from. So they actually then use another attack called app domain manager injections, which is where an attacker creates the app domain manager class, and it contains malicious code that tricks the target into loading that perverted code instead of the legit code by manipulating some environment variables. And if you want to read up on all those, you got the names now. If you search for them, you can find all kind of information. But this would affect anything that was built with the .NET framework, which is everything on Microsoft. So they basically tricked the system into loading their malicious app domain manager using that custom config file. So it's basically a DLL sideloading attack. I mean, this basically boils down to what you're going to allow users to actually execute locally, including your admins, right? Because I've seen so many times in companies where people say, oh, users have all these restrictions, but our admins can do whatever they want. And you're like, yeah, should they? I mean, they're the more dangerous people here, right? So personally, I don't let them do anything but stare at the screen blankly. I just put up like a test pattern and let them stare at it. I don't even give them keyboards or mice. They just get a monitor that basically says obey on it. I mean, I rule with an iron fist and a spiked iron glove that's coated in napalm. But you want the mainframe? You can't handle the mainframe. I was wishing I could do Sam Kinnison's voice. That's one of my great wishes. Like, some people ask the Gen for money or whatever. I asked for Sam Kinnison's voice, or maybe Bobcat Goldthwait. I don't know. 2.7 terabytes with a T, which consisted of around 31.5 million invoices, contracts, HIPAA patient consent forms, other business documents, you name it, was exposed to the public internet in a non-password protected database for some unknown time. Really? Are we still on this? I mean, this sounds like 1998, but Jeremiah Fowler spotted these exposed files and shared them with the company. According to Fowler, the database belongs to a company called ServiceBridge, which probably a lot of you have heard of. And ServiceBridge, if you haven't heard of it, is a software as a service provider. You can use this to handle work orders, customers, manage employees in the field, generate invoices, receive payments. It's an all-purpose kind of thing. And if you've ever been a consultant or you've worked for multiple companies, you probably run into it at some point. According to the report, the documents date all the way back to around 2012, and they included contracts, proposals, work orders, inspection forms. I mean, these kind of systems have everything in there. I mean, they got personal details, they've got your office number, they got your phone, they've got what you paid, when you paid it, who owed what to whom, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The documents are all PDFs and HTMLs, and they're organized by year and month. So it sounds like a kind of, text-based database backend, which is not my preference anyway, but who knows. But they said that the files were related to ServiceBridge clients ranging from private homeowners, schools, religious institutions, chain restaurants, casinos, and on and on. You start messing with casinos and people show up with like ball bats, right? I mean, I've seen that movie. But some of the data included contract details, credit card numbers, patient. I mean, you can imagine what would be in this thing, right? So ServiceBridge is owned by GPS Insight, and they did close off access to the public after being notified. Sounds like one of those old chmod 777 type problems, right? I mean, so if you have like online stuff, check it. Really? We shouldn't have to be telling you this by now, but it's amazing. Big company, and you still got this kind of stuff? And speaking of chmod 777 stars, the FBI did not do so hot in an audit run by the Office of the Inspector General, which is called the OIG. They audit government functions. Apparently, hard drives, and other flash drives and so forth containing national security data, foreign intelligence surveillance act information, and other documents classified as secret were routinely unlabeled, according to the report. Sounds like some former president's bathrooms. But, I mean, at the same time, this is pretty shocking to me. Apparently, they also don't do so hot securing things marked for destruction either. So maybe it's just as well they don't mark them secret. I mean, if you're going to leave it laying on a table, it's probably better you don't print top secret. You might want to look at this if you're, say, like Boris and Natasha. The OIG report noted that they found boxes of hard drives and removable storage sitting in the open and unattended for days or even weeks because they didn't seal the boxes until they were full, which meant that any one of the 395 staffers, contractors, janitors, cleaning crew, guys that wandered in off the street looking for a bathroom could walk right past this stuff and rummage around in it and maybe taken that flash drive with the pictures of Santa Claus at that mob party in Vegas back in 61 with Marilyn and JFK. I mean, I remember very specifically writing up a large multinational for leaving recovered hard drive, not classified, not top secret, just business sensitive, leaving all these old hard drives and flash drives and floppy disks sitting on tables waiting for the shredder to come by. I mean, these things are just sitting in bins. Need a 1 terabyte flash drive? Grab some from that box marked Tony Soprano. Might be good for a LARF. I mean, those are pretty good. So the FBI said they're installing wire cages around all this to protect it, like evidence, like at a police organization. Yeah. Now, last year, they had already been written up and promised to install video surveillance systems at the evidence destruction storage facility to make sure maybe the people that were working there, which consisted of some guy named Sid from Hackensack, weren't putting stuff in their pockets and walking home with it. But as of June of this year, the report says they're still processing the paperwork because, putting up a video surveillance system should cost only maybe like $8 billion and take 45 years to put in place, kind of like fixing a bridge in Rhode Island. But so all this will probably get fixed, next century sometime, sure. But they also apparently don't control their inventory because they don't even track these things between the office when they're marked for destruction and when they get to the destruction facility. So you've got all this stuff. It's laying on a table. Nobody knows where it is, what it is, or where it's been. And then somehow it's supposed to get from these open boxes in the basement to the destruction facility. And no way anybody along the way might just grab a few of these things to take them home. And apparently all this has not been put in place because of cost-saving measures. Yeah, okay. I was just outraged by this and disappointed a bit. Do better, guys. How much free speech is too much free speech? Well, that's a good question. This has been a long debated process around the world, and it has, all sorts of renewed implications with social media and such. I mean, just in the U.S., there are endless cases that end up in court about what constitutes free speech, what are the implications of free speech, and so forth. I did a case that involved this person who was claiming they could post whatever they wanted to, no matter how offensive or racist or misogynistic or whatever, on the company message board. And seemed to be doing this with, just wantonly, and basically said, I dare you to fire me. We'll go to the Supreme Court with this. Now, the company disagreed, and the company's legal said, no, this is our, you want to go out on the street, you want to go stand on a soapbox across the road on the sidewalk and yap, go right ahead. But you can't do that on the company message board. You can be as hateful as you like, but not in here. And they won, of course. But anyway, Telegram founder and CEO Pavel Durov got arrested in France yesterday over a probe of Telegram, Telegram was allowing all kinds of child abuse activity on the app, among other things. I always figured prison in France couldn't be that bad, right? I mean, it's like, at least the food would be good. I mean, here, if you go to prison, you get a bologna sandwich. But in France, I mean, can you imagine them serving a bologna sandwich? They'd be like, oh, tonight dinner is croque madame. I know it's bad, but okay. The wine is less than, top notch, but we can get the top notch stuff too. But anyway, Durov was already being detained in connection with distributing child sex abuse material. That sounds pretty bad. Drugs, money laundering, and organized crime. Sounds like a fine, upstanding person to me. But who knows? I mean, it could be just, big time charges that because of Telegram. I wasn't clear on that. Did Durov actually do this stuff, or was this just because of things that were being done on Telegram and they charged Durov with the crimes? I mean, I think they got it covered though. I mean, does a BBS system, I know I'm old, but I used to run a BBS. And when I ran the BBS, I did not allow people to post racist or child porn or threats or like requests to have their spouse killed or stuff like that, or even threats against the government or the police. And since I ran it, I could control it, and free speech did not apply. It was mine. You don't like it, go somewhere else. So you want to threaten the government on the corner with all the crackpots, go jump on board. You want to post child abuse fanfic, not on my server. Police, like was a guy trying to post police officers' home addresses one time and kids' addresses. And I'm like, no, I don't think so. But I mean, where do you draw the line, right? I mean, the first time I ever saw the ACLU defending the Ku Klux Klan, I got really upset. But I talked to them. I was like, I'm not giving you any more money. You're going to defend the Ku Klux Klan. But, they said, hey, free speech is free speech. We defend it regardless. And yeah, it offends us too, but that's what it's about. But I mean, what if terrorist groups are using your platform to plot a dirty bomb in fill-in name of town you care about here? Is that okay? I mean, there's a lot to debate here, and I don't have an answer. Telegram is one of the most popular messaging apps globally, and they have more than 950 million users. But it's also a popular tool that's being used by child molesters, terrorists, drug traffickers, and other extremists, just like all the other services that have existed, right? I mean, like you remember like LimeWire? I mean, it had a legitimate purpose, but guess what? Everybody using it was like downloading child porn and sharing. So it ended up getting shut down. I don't know the answer, but it's a complex question. And you should probably keep it in mind in your internals, because if they are going to start charging the administrators of these things and yours have stuff on them, maybe somebody wants to test the limits and you don't want to end up being like Durov, although at least he's in jail in France. Well, with the truth so dull and depressing, the only working alternative is wild bursts of madness and filigree. And our weekly burst of madness and filigree is Josh Marpet. Hi, Josh.
Hi, Doug. Madness and filigree?
Yeah. I mean,
okay. I suppose my beard could be filigreed. That works.
Yeah. Well, you got to love Hunter Thompson.
Oh, dear God. Yeah, no joke. It's bad country.
I always reread Fear and Loathing on the Campaign Trail 72 in an election year. So it's just like one of my little rituals.
That explains a lot about you, actually. So I have a news story today that, it's another set of 0 days. Big deal. Like Volt Typhoon. Oh, God, we haven't heard that in the last few weeks, But I really like this one because it's fascinating the system they went after, and it's fascinating the implications, and it's fascinating the blame that's being placed. So let's talk about this. My story is about Volt Typhoon, which is a Chinese hacking group. Okay, and by the way, I love this. I have to wait. They're also called Bronze Silhouette and Insidious Taurus. I love the names they're giving them, but this group with multiple names found some more 0 days in Versa Director. Okay, Versa Director is a product used by internet and service providers. So this is not something you would probably use at your office. It's something your ISP would be using to work, and it's a tool they use in their back end for all of their systems. Okay, that's cool. That's fine. That's wonderful. And they found 0 days. This happens, right? 0 days are common. The cool thing is that what this means is that your ISP, which potentially is the ISP for you, your office, your home office, your porn studio, your OT factory filled with God knows what kinds of devices, has 0 days in a piece of software that they use that moves internet bandwidth around and does all sorts of interesting things. And Versa is blaming you and blaming your ISP. What they're saying is, the Versa customers and I'm going to read the quote, who, and I quote, failed to implement system hardening and firewall guidelines, leaving a management port exposed on the internet that provided the threat actors with initial access. So because you left that port open on the internet that they designed and built and sent to you with the software that they sent to you, it's your fault. And I'm going to tell you right now, in my opinion, that's bullshit. All right. If you are building software, and you're building software that leaves a management port exposed on the internet without me, the buyer of the software, having the ability to shut that down, or having the ability to say, we use 2FA on everything, MFA on everything. If you want a management port, that's fine, but we need MFA on that. I have to be able to harden that. I have to be able to secure that. And you have to turn that off until I say, I have hardened that. I have secured that. Please turn it on. This is all about that opt-in, opt-out debate we went through years ago. Remember that? Okay. Oh, anybody can opt out of my marketing messages that I send 400 of a day. It's like, no, I need to opt into your marketing messages. Well, this is saying, I'm telling you right now that if software doesn't lock down all of the exposed ports and change the default passwords before you get it, Okay. And then allow you to turn them on, allow you to set passwords, allow you to do these things before you expose it to the internet. They are not performing modern software development. It's just that simple. And I'm happy to discuss that with anybody that wants to talk about it, because frankly, I'm right and you're wrong. So that being said, why? Because these days we assume breach. We assume that security is not enough. We assume that we have to go farther to get things to the right place. And if you, as a software developer, are telling me, well, I'm going to depend on you to Band-Aid stuff before you expose it to the internet. Well, frankly, I'm not going to buy software from you. Okay. And anybody that does shouldn't. And you should go out of business. And I'm sorry, but it's the truth. Perform it in a modern fashion. Send out secure code, or what the hell's wrong with you? Now, by the way, all you have to do is update your software. They're working on it very hard. Oh, and by the way, kudos to Lumen, Black Lotus Labs, the security research arm of Lumen Technologies. They were the ones that actually found this. Versa didn't find it. And then Versa didn't even mention them in their report. So Versa, come on, man, get with it. Somebody does you a favor by going, hey, you got a problem. We're telling you privately. At least mention them and say thank you, for God's sakes. It's polite. All right. I'll have to grab Casey Ellis at one point from Bug Crowd and ask him what's polite. All right. And if you really need to know, you can go to Disclose and disclose.io and build your vulnerability policy and all sorts of stuff like that. But I mean, Versa, come on, get with the program, build better software, say thank you to people that do a favor to you, and don't blame your users. Back to you, Doug.
Madness and filigree indeed. Thank you, Josh. And finally, I used to have an MGB. I did. It was like my car, and it didn't run a lot. And my dad sold it while I was away, and that sucked. But it was a simple car, right? It had window cranks, manual door locks, 5-speed shifters, Lucas Electronics, had a clutch. Sometimes the electronics did weird things because it's Lucas, I mean, it's what are you going to expect? But I mean, even the convertible top had to be slowly raised by hand while you stood in the rain on the side of the Jersey Turnpike. If it even ran. I mean, you may just be putting the top up and down because the car won't start. But I mean, new cars, wow. My current car's got more tech than Apollo 13 and probably better tech. And even, and it's just, and even more claims to tech. I mean, this thing claims it can do just about anything. Self-parking, of course, sir, doesn't work except in the most contrived situation. When I saw the self-park feature, I thought, yeah, right. You know that feeling when you're trying to parallel park a 1973 Cadillac Eldorado on the Upper West Side in a parking space that was better suited to a Nash Metropolitan, and everybody's blowing the horn at you and cab drivers are yelling things. Yeah. And you're trying to get it in there. Yeah. Well, an AI parking attendant sounded like just the thing right there, right? Like, just park, Jeeves. I mean, honestly, the feature I wanted to have was the feature where the car circles a block while you run in to get some knishes, and you don't want to leave the car double parked in the middle of a 1-lane street, that kind of stuff. Although that works pretty well when the trash truck stops and you can just run in the store and get something while they're sitting up there and you're waiting. But I mean, anyway, we seem to be in the other realm than the old MG now. Screens, screens for every passenger, gesture controls. The BMW's got some kind of gesture controls. I'm like, ooh, I waved my arms. I was making a nasty gesture at somebody, on the Garden State. And, the car thinks that means slam into a bridge piling or something. Facial recognition we've seen. A breathalyzer built into your steering wheel. I mean, I don't know. It all seems to have gotten out of hand. And I do want a self-driving car, really. I mean, then they can bring back the bar, right? Because if you got a self-driving car, you can have a bar in the car and nobody's going to say anything. Jeeves, drive us home. Pour me an old fashioned while I strut it, and none of your lip, or I'll have you sent to Australia. But I like that idea. But the tech for that's not really here yet. But my car has way too much useless tech. It's got so much feature set in the screens that I don't even use. I'm old, I know, but what do you do with all this stuff, right? Yours probably does too, but that's how marketing works, right? They convince you. But this whole article that I put up was just about how cars have too much tech and how the tech is not so great and so forth. And I still remember when I had a Toyota and they put a GPS in it and you couldn't update it. the only way to update the GPS was to like go to the Toyota dealer where they would sell you a new DVD for only $400 and something, and they updated it like once a year, and you were supposed to come in, and they would always, every time I would take the car in for service, they would be like, would you like to update your GPS? And I'm like, yeah, sure. And they're like, oh, it is $795. I'm like, what? Like, to update my GPS that you put in the car? Yeah, you have to buy the new DVD. And I'm like, okay, that's okay, really. I don't use it anyway. I'm just using my phone for GPS, which is probably a lot better than what you've got anyway, because mine has traffic on it. But anyway, I still wish I had my old MG, although it would probably be sitting in my garage not running. But I guess I'll just have to settle for a lot more screens. Yeah. And that is the news. Thanks to the filigree Josh, and I will see you next time on the Security Weekly News.